This is the confusion of the historical records of the country we love, Indonesia. Gunadarma, not the architect who designed Borobudur, Soelaman, also didn't build it. His philosophy is not based on any of the two Indian religions, just by looking. There is not his statue, sitting cross-legged. Pay attention to. Borobudur was built in the 8th century AD, on the basis of the estimation of the Dutch philologist Casparus. This is not true, timing is only based on estimates. The name, Gunadarma, has never been found in the records of the kings of the archipelago. This name is in Javanese folklore about the Manore Mountains which resemble a lying person. Not true either. Borobudur was designed based on a book of procedures for building temples originating from outside the archipelago, India. So far published in the wake of the book, Shilpa Shastra, and Vastu Sastra, from India. Let us look at it for clarification based on academic studies and studies. Shilpa Shastras is derived from Sanskrit, literally means arts and crafts. In the context of sacred building design, Shilpa Shastras is a guidebook for making sculptures and iconography, which explains, among other things, the proportions of sculpture figures, composition, principles, meanings, and also architectural rules. The meaning of Shilpa, according to Stella Kramrisk, very complex. He interpreted as art, skill, craft, ingenuity, rites and rituals, form and creation. Other books about building in India are Vastu Sastras and Vastu Vidya. This is an ancient term in India. Vastu Sastras is literally the science of residential buildings. Books on architecture in ancient Sanskrit are often called Vastu Vidya. Vastu Shastra and Vastu Vidya, often associated with the Indus Valley civilization Mohenjo-daro, but scientists such as Kapila Vatsyayan deny this because ancient text of this book has never been found in the Indus Valley civilization. According to Michael Meister, a professor of Indology, specializing in Indian architecture, argues that Atharvaveda contains verses with mystical cosmogonies that provide a paradigm of cosmic planning and in this book do not represent architecture or practice related to engineering. Varahamihira's book, Brihatsamhita dated 6th century AD. Meister is the first known Indian text describing urban planning. The guidebook for planning cities and buildings. Sanskrit language manuals found to build magnificent temples circulating in India. The Vastu Sastra guide includes chapters on house construction, urban planning. Next is the Manasara Shilpa book from South India, which is thought to have circulated in the 5th-7th century AD as a guidebook on the design and construction of the South Indian Vastu. In northern India, the Brihatsamhita by Varahamihira is an ancient Sanskrit building book quoted from the 6th century, describing the temple construction design in the Nagara style. Isanasivagurudeva Padati is another Sanskrit language from the 9th century AD that describes the art of building in South and Central India. Another book named Silpa Prakasa Odisha, written by Ramachandra Bhattaraka Kalakara, around the 9th century AD or the 10th century AD is another development of Vastu Sastra. Pay attention. All Indian books only existed in the 5th century AD, not older than Borobudur. No. Borobudur was not built based in the Shilpa Shastra and Vastu Sastra books from India. But this building existed long before the books existed and were made in India. If it is true that Borobudur was built based in the Indian books, when and who brought those books to the Indonesian archipelago? And what is the name that directs the builders and reliefs to follow the procedure like the Indian book? This is an academic question that must be answered correctly. Wana Chaka Phala, now called Borobudur. This building is Sangharama Branch University in Svarnadvipa named Dharma Phala. Also the youngest branch in Bihar, India, Nalanda, was founded in 427 AD in the wake of Raja Phala dynasty Sailendra. Pioneer of Dharmak, his ancestors were Dapuntahiam Sri Jayanasa, Kadachuan Kri Vijaya, in Svarnadvipa. Their names were the ancestors of the Indonesian archipelago before Dapunta Hyang and Rezi Markandeya. Dharmadasa 700 to 620 BC. Dharmapala 670 to 580 BC. Suvarnadvipa Dharmakirtis 610 to 520 BC. Kumarila Bhatta 618 to 540 BC. Adi Sankara 569 to 537 BC. The names above are original Indonesian archipelago humans who were pioneers of Dharma teachings. Dharmak. Dhamma is the essence that underlies the teachings of Eastern religions. Jainism, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhs and Zoroastrians. Perfectly recorded and illustrated in Borobudur. Let us examine what has been said about Borobudur. Based. Kaspar's opinion is based on the interpretation of the inscription dated 824 AD and the inscription Sri Kahulunan 842 AD. The founder of Borobudur temple was Smaratungga, who ruled from 782 to 812 AD during the Sailendra dynasty. Let's look one by one at the underlined word. A. Kasparas. B. Sailendra. C. Smaratungga. D. Sri Kahulunan 842 AD. A. Johannes Jaespertus de Kasparas. Johannes Jaespertus Hans de Kasparas, born in Eems, the 31st of May 1916, died in Wassenaar, the 19th of June 2002 at the age of 86 years, is a philologist from the Netherlands. Apart from having many scientific works and academic achievements, he is credited with changing the attitude of the Indonesian government, which previously underestimated the field of archaeology to be used as teaching material on early history and archaeology in Indonesia. L'importance de la Discipline en Javanais, 1947, Inscription I. Inscripties uit de Kalendra Tide, 1950. 20 jaar studie van de ouder geschiedenis van Indonesia, 1931-1951. 1954. Indonesian Inscription II. Selected inscriptions from the 7th to the 9th century AD, 1956. Short inscriptions from Jandi Plaosan Lore, 1958, Historical Writing on Indonesia, 1961. Indonesian Paleography. A History of Writing in Indonesia from the Beginnings to c. A. Part 1500, 1975. The Role of Adityawarman, the Son of Malay in Southeast Asia, 1989, An Ancient Garden in West Sumatra, 1990. Johannes Jaespertus de Kasparas. He is credited with interpreting the Dutch version of Indonesian history, calling the figures for the founding year of Borobudur based on estimates. We look at this. In 1954, the historian Kasparas wrote his dissertation that Borobudur was built in the year 824 AD. Pay attention. The number of years referred to as the estimated year number. The word forecast we underline. This is not valid scientific and academic data, this is only a Kasparas estimate. So, Kasparas wrote figures for the year of Borobudur development based only on estimates. Review and study for further clarification. Wangsa Sailendra is the next generation who, caring for the ancestral sacred buildings of the archipelago's predecessors, Wangsa Sailendra is known to be adherents of the Shiva teachings of the archipelago. Watch the word Shiva. This is not Hindu India. Because the name of the Hindu religion formally exists, to refer to religion, only in the 9th century AD, during the colonialist era in India. Borobudur building. This existed long before the birth of the teaching called religion. This information is obtained from the findings of the text on the inscription, Sojomerto. The name, Borobudur, according to existing records, is based on inscriptions. Is it not true? On the Kayumbungan inscription and Tri Tepusan inscription, says the same name with the written intention with the title, Kamulan Ibumashambara. The name Budur, which was later written by Borobudur, by Raffles in English, called the village closest to the site, namely the village of Bor, or Boro. But the fact around the site there is no village, Bor. Raffles also suspected that the term, Budur, might be related to the Javanese term which means, ancient, he said. In fact, not found in the sentence, Javanese, which means, purba, is the word, Budur. Budur in Javanese terms is Buduran, Bisal, or Bisulan. English language as Boils. Borobudur, a historical record monument that embodies the original teachings of the archipelago, appears in its reliefs. Borobudur is preserved by the Sailendra dynasty. The inscription written with the number of years and the name of the king is an inscription that contains a declaration. Maintenance of sacred buildings, caring for, is not building. Wangsa Sailendra does not adhere to teachings from outside, all kings and their descendants adhere to the original teachings of the archipelago, the teachings of worshipping one god, Hyang Widi Tungal. The statue of a person sitting cross-legged is a ritual procession of the original teachings of the archipelago, namely the Topo Brodo Samadhi contemplation, Suwung who appeared at the Borobudur stupa. Not a statue of a Agung Mulia figure from outside the archipelago, Indonesia. Topo Brodo, a Javanese term. Tapa Brata, a Sundanese term. Samadhi and Batagak, Sumatra terms. Yoga is an Indian term. Upasana Balinese term. Kamala is the term Sulawesi. Is the original ritual contemplation procession of the archipelago. Spread throughout the world as wide as 3/4 of the earth to the land of India to become a religion, one of which is named Jaina. Also colored the land of Arabia, as evidenced by the cultural similarity of Jew and Parmalim, Batak. Authentic. Bali with India. The stupa with statues of people sitting cross-legged is a depiction of the spiritual contemplation procession of our previous ancestors, Topo. Topo Brodo. Through several stages including body toponing, toponing lust, toponing budi, toponing suksmo, toponing kahio, toponing jessing, which in the end humans reach the level of perfection. Mukso is mortal, dissolved invisible to our mensi, enters a higher dimension of life and does not die. The 3 stages of Borobudur are an image that describes the Wanatraya. Wana means the universe or the realm of life. Wanatraya are the 3 planes of existence that exist in this universe. The 3 realms of life are reflected in the 3 stages of Wana Sakapala, the original name of Borobudur. 1. Bawana lasts. 2. Bawana Drio. 3. Bawana Triya. In Sunda Wiwitan, it is called 1. Bawana Niskala. 2. Bawana Alam Tenga. 3. Buawana Nyangkung. In its full form it is called Sasaka Domas. The 3 stages in the Borobudur building are evidence of our teachings. This is evidence that the Borobudur site is based in the original archipelago philosophy as evidenced by the word Svarga, not written with the word Nirvana or Nibbana based in the basic relief which is now not exposed. Meanwhile, the essence of the meaning of the word Nirvana or Nibbana is very different from the literacy of the word Svarga. Wana Saka Pala. People now call it Borobudur. This building is a monument to the Mecca of the world of previous advanced civilizations, where the world community was present in the past. The Great Empire has been established and centered on the land of Java. Our ancestors colored 3/4 of the earth's face, not the opposite. Sailendra. Is it true? The founder of Borobudur is the Sailendra dynasty who adheres to Mahayana Buddhism. Let's look at it and we study it academically for clarification. Does the number of years printed on the inscription indicate the number of the year it was founded? Wangsa Sailendra is the successor of the ancestors who took care of Borobudur. Caring not building. The number of the year is the time of the king's declaration, in the written year number, and the written year number is not the Saka year which began in AD 78, the Indian version of the calendar. Let's take a closer look. The Ligar inscription is an inscription that praises himself as the incarnation of Vishnu. The key word is Vishnu, a word that is always rooted in Shiva and Brahma. This is a feature of the original teachings of the archipelago, not found in Mahayana. Raja Dharanindra, the king of the Sailendra dynasty in Java who ruled Dharmic. So, Dharanindra adherence to Dharmic teachings originating from the archipelago is not a religion that was born in the 9th century AD in India, nor is it a religion that was born in the 5th century BC. If there is a similarity in the mention of the name of God, this is evidence of the teachings of the ancient archipelago's ancestors spread there. When did Indian missionaries spread it here? It was only in the pre-New Order era that it became an alternative choice for the official state religion. Just know, it is the original teachings of the archipelago that grew in India into 3 major teachings, one of which is Jaina, with the figure Mahavira, in the 5th century BC. Borobudur. Real name. Bawana Saka Pala. Existed before the Sailendra house took care of its ancestral heritage buildings. Samaragrawira. In Java in the Kaloric inscription, it is stated that Samaragrawira is identical to Rakai Warak, Putra Dararindra in the Nalanda inscription. Samaragrawira has a son Balaputredua. Based in the Kayumbungan inscription, Samaragrawira had a son Samaratunga and he had a daughter Pramawardhani. Pramawardhani and others believed the same as his predecessor in adhering to the teachings of Dharma, and it was this figure who declared himself caring for Borobudur. Samaratunga. In Java, Sri Maharaja Samaratunga is the king of the Medang kingdom from the Sailendra dynasty, married to Dwi Tara, the daughter of Dharmasetu, the former Srivijaya ruler, and had sons Balaputredua and Pramodawardhani. Pramodawardhani married Rakai Paikatan, son of Sri Maharaja Rakai Gurung or Mpu Pilar, the fifth king of the Medang kingdom as stated in the Kayumbungan inscription. Inscription is a record when the king declared the maintenance of a sacred building, because it was recorded that a different number of years was recorded in each inscription. Does not mean continuing to build Borobudur as written today. In the Kayumbungan inscription it is written in two languages, Sanskrit and Old Javanese. In the second part in Old Javanese, issued by Rakai Padapan Mpu Pilar. Written, Sima Swatantra, which is to award several villages to take care of sacred buildings. Also, Jinalaya, is a way of caring for sacred buildings. So the contents of this inscription are a declaration of the king to care for sacred buildings, with the compensation of people who take care of being free from paying taxes. Next study for us to clarify. The three stages of Borobudur are a description explaining Bhawana Traya. Bhawana means the universe or the realm of life. Bhwanatraya are the three planes of existence that exist in this universe. The three realms of existence are reflected in the three stages of Bhawana Saka Pala. Bhawana lasts, Bhawana Drio, Bhawana Triya. Bhawana Saka Pala. Original name, Borobudur, World Qibla Monument at the time. Borobudur is not a philosophy from outside the archipelago. Borobudur is a monument to historical records that embody the original teachings of the archipelago, original Dharmic. It is evident from the text written on the most basic reliefs which now cannot be seen in general, including the 12 words, Svarga. Another word that proves the above explanation is Kusaladharmabhahana, Mahechakya. What is the meaning of the word Mahe? Is great or great, great. The meaning of the word Kakya is the Kakya or Saka, ancestors of the Indonesian archipelago. The true meaning of the word Svarga is very different from Nibbana. And Wangsa Sailendra is not a religion from outside the archipelago. All kings and their descendants adhere to the original teachings of the archipelago, the teachings of worshipping one god. Hyang Widi Tungal. Chinese pilgrims from Fa Hien 399 to 414 AD to It Shing 671, 695 AD, came to the Indonesian archipelago earlier to learn, not bringing Buddhism from his country to spread here. And Palembang was not the center of Buddhism in the past. Don't get me wrong, let alone participate in publishing it without a basis. The most important excavation by Indonesian Buddhist scholars is the concept of divinity in Buddhism, which was adopted from various studies of ancient texts in the book Sanghyang Kamahayanikan. Teachings of the ancestors of the Indonesian nation, namely the concept of Hyang Widi Tunggal, and on the basis of one of these. The state includes Buddha as one of the official religions of the state. Mahayana, labeled in Borobudur. Mahayana and Borobudur. Especially in Indonesia it was published there, after 1955, when Ashan Jinarakita returned to Indonesia and also when the state allowed the national, Waisak, ceremony at Borobudur. And from now on Borobudur is published based on Mahayana Buddhism. Academic facts prove that text literacy. The 12 words, Svarga, in the closed bas-relief prove this is not Buddhism. The 12 words, Svarga, in the bas-reliefs of Borobudur are the concept of understanding life after death. These words are absorbed into word literacy texts. Heaven. Indonesia language in Bahasa is Surga. This is the concept of understanding life after death, the teachings of the Indonesian nation's ancestors. Original Dharmic. This teaching spread to 3/4 of the world, underpinning the teachings that thrived in lands outside the archipelago, Indonesia. We are not from India to Arabia, but both from here. Before we discuss in detail the questions above, let us know the history and period of the kingdoms in the archipelago. And the written year still uses the school year, which has not been revised. A. Salakanagara 132 AD 362 AD. B. Kutai, 4th century AD. C. Tarumanagara, 358 AD 669 AD. D. Kendon 536 AD 612 M. E. Gala 612 AD 1528 AD. F. Kalinga, 6 to 7 AD century. G. Sriwijaya, 7th 13th century AD. H. Sailendra, 8th 9th century AD. I. Medong Kingdom, 752-1006 AD. J. Kahuripan Kingdom, 1006-1045 AD. K. Sunda Kingdom, 932-1579 AD. L. Kediri, 1045-1221 M. M. Dharmasraya, 12th-14th century AD. N. Singhasari, 1222-1292 AD. O. Majapahit, 1293-1500 AD. P. Malayapura, 14 to 15 century AD. And the written year still uses the Saka year, which has not been revised, because the presumption of the early Saka year on the inscription, which is currently considered to have started in 78 AD, must be revised. Calculation of the early Saka year 78 AD led to the loss of the history of the Indonesian nation before that year. House of Sailendra, or Sailendra, is the name of the Wangsa or dynasty of kings who ruled Sriwijaya. The origin of this dynasty is still being debated by historians who say that from Sumatra, Java, Cambodia, Funan and India. For an explanation of this we will find it in the next section. In exposing a written explanation of historical facts, it can be proven based on the existing inscription, as long as the inscription does not undergo physical changes and distortion of the meaning of what is written in the inscription. To prove whether it was the Sailendra house who founded or built Borobudur, let's follow this explanation. To reconstruct the history of ancient Indonesia, several sources are needed. The sources based on their validity can be detailed as follows. 1. The source of the inscription. This source is the first and foremost source in reconstructing the history of ancient Indonesia. This is because the inscription is authentic data that contains a binding stipulation or decision issued by a king or official. This decree is complemented by the year the inscription was issued, calendar element, the king or official who issued the inscription, the offerings given to officials pasek, and ended with a curse or sapatha, addressed to the person, or a group of people who destroy and violate the contents of the inscription. More than 80% of the ancient Javanese inscriptions contain matters relating to land status issues. It can be understood that Indonesia is an agricultural country where the issue of land status is very important, especially with regard to the determination of Sima, Swatantra, autonomy, of a village. Or the area is declared to be a Perdikan area which is exempt from royal taxes for some reason. The remaining small part of the 80% contains, among other things, legal issues, debt problems, problems with a person's citizenship status, and so on. 2. Sources of old Javanese literary works, especially the book Negarakertagama, Sutasoma, the Pararadan book, the Kidung books, Babad, Lontar texts, and so on. Of course, the validity value of each of these sources is different. For example, the book Negarakertagama has a higher validity than the Pararadan book, because Negarakertagama is known to the author. It is known that the year of writing was in his era, Majapahit. The author of Pararadan is not known, nor is the date of writing known, and in terms of language it is estimated to be from the 16th century AD. 3. Foreign news, including news from Chinese, Arabic, Portuguese, Dutch and so on. Chinese news has contributed a lot to tracing the history of ancient Indonesia. Although these sources were written and copied from generation to generation, from dynasty to dynasty, so that their validity needs to be tested, while the advantage of Chinese news is that the information conveyed is what they see and they experience. For example, Queen Simo ruled so hard and firmly that the prince of his feet spread gold coffers on the road and was punished by cutting off his legs. This made his enemies afraid to face his rule. W.P. Gronielt, 1960. Likewise, the Arabic news provides a lot of information about trade in the 9 to 10th century AD. Especially during the Majapahit era, there were trade relations with China, thousands of findings of Chinese currency, kepung, from various dynasties and Chinese jars have been found both intact and fragmentary in the Trowulan area, the former capital of the Majapahit kingdom. Even decorations in the form of Chinese jars have become part of the decorations on either side of the statues of the Majapahit era. The name Sailendra is written in many inscriptions with a variety of affixes at the beginning and at the end of the word Sailendra. 1. Sailendravamsa. First encountered in the Kalasan inscription from 778 AD. 2. Sailendragurubas, Sailendrawansadalaxia, Sailendra Gurubas Prasasti Caloric from 782 m. 3. Sailendrawansadalakana, in the Abhayagiri inscription from AD 792. 4. Dharmadingadewa Sailendra, in the Sojomurto inscription from AD 700. 5. Sailendranama, in the Kayumbungan inscription from the year 824 AD. 6. Outside the archipelago, the name Sailendra is found in the Ligar and Nalanda inscription 775 AD. And the written year still uses the Saka year, which has not been revised, because the presumption of the early Saka year on the inscription, which is currently considered to have started in 78 AD, must be revised. Calculation of the early Saka year 78 AD led to the loss of the history of the Indonesian nation before that year. Sailendra's name is written in many inscriptions. 1. Kalasan inscription. 2. Caloric inscription. 3. Abhayagiri inscription. 4. Sojomurto inscription. 5. Kayumbungan inscription. 6. Ligar inscription. Let us follow this explanation one by one, what is stated in the inscription, and to prove whether it was true that the Sailendra house founded or built Borobudur, published by Sailendra, adheres to Mahayana Buddhism, and whether the number of years printed on the inscription shows the number of the year it was founded. Let's examine it for clarification. In the above description about the name, Sailendravamsa, was first encountered in the Kalasan inscription from 778 AD. Let us look at the Kalasan inscription below. Research on figures associated with these sacred buildings has been carried out using written source data, especially inscriptions, including the Tuk Mas inscription, the Kangal inscription, 654 Saka, 732 AD, the Kalasan inscription, 700 Saka, 778 AD, the inscription Caloric, 704 Saka, 782 AD, and so on, as well as Chinese news. Once again, the written year still uses the Saka year, which has not been revised, because the presumption of the early Saka year on the inscription, which is currently considered to have started in 78 AD, must be revised. Calculation of the early Saka year 78 AD led to the loss of the history of the Indonesian nation before that year. The oldest kingdom name mentioned in the inscription sources in the central Java region is the Mataram kingdom, which is better known as the Mataram Kuna kingdom to differentiate it from the Islamic Mataram kingdom, with its king named Sanjaya. The inscription is the Kangal inscription, 654 Saka, which was found in the temple courtyard on top of Mount Wukir in Salam district, Magalang. Kangal inscription uses the Pallawa letters, speaks Sanskrit, and talks about the king Sanjaya interpreted as being Shiva, who erected a phallus on the hill of Stiranga. Besides the Kangal inscription, the name Sanjaya, mentioned in the Mantyasi inscription issued by Rakai Watukura Daya Balatung. In the Mantyasi inscription there is a list of the names of the kings who ruled in Medang, Rayongta Rumahun Riem Dang Ri Po Pitu. In the list Rakai Mataram, the Queen Sanjaya is named first, which is then followed by a series of names of kings who have the title Sri Maharaja Rakai Mataram. Queen Sanjaya is considered to be the founder of the Sanjaya dynasty, Sanjayavamsa, which ruled the Mataram kingdom. However, research reconstructing the course of the ancient Mataram history has resulted in the name Sailendravamsa beside Sanjayavamsa. Sailendravamsa, found in several inscriptions, including in the Kalasan inscription, 700 Saka, the Caloric inscription, 704 Saka, the Abhayagiri inscription from the hill of Ratu Baka, 714 Saka. Kayumbungan inscription. In general, the Sankara inscriptions talk about the father of the Sankara, who was very obedient to his teacher, gives 6 gold to the Sankara with a promise to fulfill. According to Bukhari, Sankara's father was the king of Sanjaya, while Sankara himself was Rakai Panangkaran. He moved the center of his kingdom to the east. The location of the new capital may be around Sragen, east of Bengawan Solo, or in the Purwodadi, Grobogan area. From his description, Bukhari has identified Penangkaran with Sailendrawan Sadalaka, which is mentioned in several inscriptions. Even according to Bukhari, if Penangkaran is synonymous with Sailendravam Sadalaka, then as stated in the Nalanda inscription, he was a son of Samaragravira and Balaputredua, the king of Srivijaya, was his grandson. The opinion that Rakai Penangkaran changed religions, according to Bukhari, is stated in the Sankara inscription, especially verse 3, which begins with the sentence. So, Yam Tayak Tanyabaktir Jagadasi Viharak Chamkarak Chamkarakya. The translation is as follows. He, who is named Sankara, having left the service of another god, is from the Sankara who eliminates the rest of the world. Basically, the author agrees with the translation above. There are only slight differences, as follows. He who is named Sankara, whose devotion to others has been abandoned, rather than Sankara, the Shiva who rules the world. From this translation, the author doubts that Sankara converted. The word Sankara is not a belief or religion. Sankara is an unkind attitude, namely Ankara or complete, contained in a unity sentence Ankara. Anger. It is not religion, or describes a conversion. Let alone Mahayana Buddhism. This opinion is corroborated by the verse in the 4th stanza. It is said that after he established prasada for Datur, he spoke of moksha, which is the highest bliss. Moksha was obtained by the holy Vredans, ascetics, through knowledge, Jnana, which was obtained from the daughter of Datur, Saraswati. The complete sentence is as follows. Shreyo mokshan naparam adikam kathayat jnanavidbir. Moksas so, pi vredabir anahar labyat jnanahato. Taksiya jnanam vredabir amalam labyat yat prasadad. Dada putri janaya tu s tarvam vandita n a kavitam. The concept of moksha is not used in Buddhism. Likewise, in closing stanzas other than Bhiksu and Sangha, other figures groups are called, namely Datur daughters, Vredans, Kulapati, King Nr Padir, protector of Dashu, so that mentioning Buddha and Bhiksu does not guarantee a Buddhist king. The word Dashu is Datu. Brahmin masters teachers who understand Dharma, original Dharmic. This section closes the inscription praying for all those who are called good luck. It should be noted here, on the next line, in verse 3, there is the word Anartagurubhayas, which means fear of the wrong teacher. Somadio 21993-109. Possibly related to the Sankara vows mentioned at the beginning of the inscription. It is unclear the content of his promise. Perhaps Sankara promised the teacher to build a holy building for Datur with the 6 gold as the cost, in the hope that his father would be well. But when his father died, Sankara blamed his teacher, who was called Anartaguru. But then, fearing his guru, he voluntarily, Svatmabuddhas, fulfilled his promise by making the prasada. To strengthen the opinion that Penangkaran was not the king of the Sailendra dynasty and was not Buddhist, the author will convey a translation of the Kalasan inscription, a Sanskrit inscription, using pre-Nagari letters from 700 Saka, as follows. The complete sentence is as follows. Namo Bhagavatyai Aryatarayai. 1. Yatarayatyamita duakabhavad magnum locum vilokya vidivatrivadhara 40. Sa. 6. Va Surendranaralokavipudasaram Tara Disatvabimatam Gardnerara. 2. Avarjya. 7. Maharajam Daya Pankapanam Panamkaranam Sailendra Rajagurubas Tarabhavanam Haikaritam Srimat 3. Gurvajnaya Kratajnyas. 8. Taradevi Kirtapi Tad Bhavanam Vinayamahayanavidam Bhavanam Kapyaryan Hexanam. 4. Pankuratavanadira Panamavir Adessasastribarajnya Tarabhavanam Karidamidam Mapi Kapi Aryanhexanam. 5. Rajye Pravardamane. 9. Rajnya Sailendra Vamsadalakasya Sailendra Rajagurubas Tarabhavanam Kurtam Kurtabi. 6. Sakanarpakaladatar Varsasada Saptabir Maharaja Root Gurapujartham. 10. Tarabhavanam Panamkarana. 7. Grama Kalasanam Adata Samgaya Saksina Kurtva Pankuratavanadiripa Dasadyaksan Mahapurusan. 8. Buradaksinium. 11. Atula Data Samgaya Rajasimhana Sailendrarajabupair Anaparapalyar Santatya. 9. The Pankuradibi, the Tavanakadibi, the Tirupadabi Padibiska Sadubi, Caap. 10. Sarvan Evagamina Parthavendran Buyo Buyo. Yakat Rajasimha, Samanyoyam Dharmasadar Naranam Kale Kale Polanayo Bavadbi. 11. Anena Punyena Viharayena Praditya Jata, 12. Arthavibhagavijña Bhavantu Sarv Tribhavopapana Janajananam Anasanajña. 12. Karyanapanaamkarana Sriman Abhyakate Bhavinarpan, Buyo Buyo Vidivid Viharaparipalan Artham iti. Translate. Respect for Bhagavati Arya Tara. Iri Nalanda Mahaviharya Arya Bhiksusamgasya. This text is written in the Nalanda Bihar area of India. There is a stupa site called Saraputra. Important word point is in the word Arya. It was found in the opening sentence at the inscription, Kalasan. Namo Bhagavat Yai Arya Tara Yai. After seeing things in the world that sank in misery, he crossed with 3 true knowledge. He Tara who became 1-5, a holy building Tara has been established by King Sailendra teachers in the kingdom of Pramada Wangsa Sailendra who is growing. 6. Maharaja Panankatha establishes the holy building Tara for respect for teachers in the year that has run 700 years. 7. The village named Kalasa has been given to Samga after summoning witnesses of the leading people of village rulers namely Pankura, Tavana, Tirapa. 8. Alms, Bura, that is inevitable is given to the Sangha by Rahu is like a lion, Rajasima, by the kings of the Wangsa Sailendra and the rulers are then changed. 9. By Pankura and his followers, the Tavana and his followers of the Tirapa and his followers, by the soldiers, and religious leaders, then. 10. Traja like a lion, Rajasimha asked for repeatedly to the king. 11. Okay. By removing the monastery, all the holy knowledge, the cause of the effect, and birth in 3 worlds accordingly can be understood. Vihara Mahaviharya said the practice and procession of the spiritual contemplation that was made of large and magnificent. Maha and Viharya enjoined to Mahaviharya, said, Vihara. Started from this word Mahavihari based in the translation of the inscription. In Kalasan inscription there were 2 kings, namely Sri Maharaja Daya Pankapana Panamkarana and King Sailendravamsatlaka, Pramada Wangsa Sailendra. That there were 2 kings on the Kalasan inscription, it was stated by Van Nersen, 1947, and De Casparis, 1950. According to them, Rakai Panankan was king of the subordinate of King Sailendravamsatlaka, who was told to build Tarabhavanam for King Sailendra, Sumadio 2, 1984-8990. But on the contrary, in the opinion of the author, it is precisely Sailendravamsatlaka, the king of the subordinate of the Panankan, on the following reasons. 1. Rakai Panankan held Sri Maharaja, while Sailendravamsatlaka held Raja, only 2-3. To establish a holy building, King Sailendra sent the teacher to ask for the care of Sri Maharaja Daya Pankapana Panamkarana. If the plan of the king of the subordinate, why should he ask for permission to the Panankan first? 4. The teacher's efforts are approved by the Panankan for the purpose of Gurupujartham, which means aiming to respect the teacher. Thus the postgraduate agreement to establish Tarabhavanam is to respect the Gurupujartham facing the Panankan to ask to establish a Tarabhavanam, and not because of the Mahayana Buddhist. Buddhist know once again that the Buddha entered the toilet for the official new country in 1953. The previous period before the new order that a subordinate king and the people did not have to have the same religion as the king, as evidenced by the many remnants of the Saija temple around Borobudur. From this Kalasan inscription we know King Sailendravamsatlaka maybe just arrived or just founded his kingdom, and became the king of the subordinate Sri Maharaja Panankan. A king of Sanjayavamsa King Sanjaya's son. In 1921, in the monastery room No. 1 in Nalanda by Hiranya Shastri found artifacts in the form of copper plates, Balaputradeva donations, from the Sailendra dynasty in Suvarnadvipa Nusantara. Written as follows. We were asked by Maharaja Balaputradeva the holy building called the caloric inscription as a Sivu building, although it is not the current form, because Sivu temple is built 3 times Sailendravamsatlaka on the Nalanda inscription from King Devapaladeva. We meet Sailendravam he King Javanese, departed by Samaratunga who married to Tara, son of Raja Dharmasetu from Somawamsa. From this marriage the Ra Balaputradua king, King Sriwijaya, who has established a holy building in Nalanda, Sumadio 21993-112. With the opinion of 2 dynasties in central Java, Samaratunga is not a Christ child, but the son of King Sailendravamsatlaka who ruled in Java. Based on the translation of the 700 Saka Kalasan inscription in the central Java region, there are two dynasties, namely the Sanjaya dynasty Sanjayavamsa, and the Sailendra dynasty Sailendravamsa. King Sailendravamsa when it was located as king of Sri Maharaja Daya Pankapana Panangkatha. Therefore, to establish Tarabhavanam in his own kingdom, which was said to be developing, growing. Rajye Pravardhamain. He must ask permission in advance to Sri Maharaja Panamkarana. Through the teacher Rakai Panankan did not switch religion, he agreed to the establishment of Tarabhavanam to mind, teachers. Maybe this was the reason used by King Sailendra to send his teachers asking for the plan to establish a Tarabhavanam. Another discussion about inscriptions from Kutai is refined on a stone pole commonly called Yupa. Of some readable Yupa can be obtained by various information including the names of kings who begin by mentioning the name Maharaja Kudunga has the son of the Akwawarman who has 3 sons, one of which is the leading named Mulawarman. West Java, precisely the area of Bogor and Jakarta, the kingdom of Tarumanagara with his king named Kripurnarwarman. Whether the names of the kings in Kutai and Tarumanagara are not people who come from India. They are indigenous people, using the title, Warman. There is the name Warman in India including the name of the first character called in the Kutai inscription, namely, Kudunga. Such is information obtained from the Pras in Purnarwarman inscriptions, Poerbajaraka, 1952. The preparation mentions that springs whose water is clear and cold there is that coming out of rock or sand to a place that is a lot of interest in white, and flows here there. After being one and then flowing like a river. An inscription found in the village of Sojomerto, Batang, Pekalongan indicated a kind of genealogy, namely the name of the Salenda who reports named Santanu and stranded Badrawati. It is stated that this Salenda Dapunta adheres to religion Kawa, original Dharmic, original teachings of archipelago, not Hindu from India. This information was interpreted by Bukhari, that based on the Sojomerto inscription, it turned out that in central Java there were no 2 dynasty, but there was only one, namely the Salendra of the oceans. The same thing has also been stated by Poerbajaraka, Bukhari, 1967. The Sojomerto inscription was found near the ruins of the temple on Mount Wukir, Salaman, Muntilan. In this inscription, it is mentioned a holy building on the Staranga hill equals strong-bodied, to worship a phallus. The holy building in the linga is in the king of Sanjaya in a sign as a sign of the victory of King Sanjaya against his interesting enemies. From this inscription is the year that is written in the form of Kandra Sankala that reads Kruti Indriya flavor 456 equals 654 c. Once again written year still uses the year of Saka that has not been revised. Because the presumption of the year the initial Saka in the inscription which is currently considered starting in the 78th year, must be revised by the initial Saka year 78 AD causing loss. The history of the Indonesian nation before after Sana died, her kingdom was confused about looking for her protection. As for those who appeared as a brave king like Sri Rama conquered the kings around him, King Sanjaya. He is the son of Sanaha's sister of the king of Sana. In the Manchasi inscriptions called the name Rajaraja Penjaraja Balatung, not a genealogy, starting from Rakai Mataram the Queen Sanjaya, Sri Maharaja Rakai Panangkan, Sri Maharaja Rakai Pasungan, Sri Maharaja Rakai Warak. In Wanua middle 3 inscriptions it was more complete, the king of the Balatung pressure, and detailed with the year of governing and his shoulder, while completing the Manchasi inscription. Broadly lines of ancient Mataram kings before Balatung are mentioned in Wanua Central Prasex 3 as follows. Rayongta Re Mdang, Rake Panangkaran, Rake Panaran, Rake Warak Daya Manera, Daya Sugar, Rake Garung, Rake Tikatan Daya. From the information obtained from both the Manchasi inscription and the Central Hanua Prasasti 3 can be known the names of the ancient Mataran kings starting from Sanjaya to Rakai Watukura Daya Balatung. The difference in the names of the king of the 2 inscriptions was caused by the difference in the background of the issuance of the inscription. Manchasi inscriptions were issued as a legitimacy of Balatung as king because Balatung rose the throne due to marriage, marrying the son of King Daksaksa. Therefore, in the Manchasi inscriptions, which is listed, only sovereign kings are full of the entire royal area, for example Daya Sugar, Daya Tagwas, Daya Dewendra, and Daya Badra are not included in the list because they have never sovereign full of the royal territory. This is evident from the brevity of their reign because it was overthrown from the throne, as it was known from the central Wanua Prasasti 3, frame, 1988. In the inscription the name of King Sanjaya is not called because the history of rice fields in Wanua Central has only been started from the Rakai Penangkan period. From Tela Prasasti Wanua Central 3 it can be seen that the change of ancient Mataram kings is not always smooth, the change of throne often occurs, and can be seen that the throne of the throne often occurs. From the results of the reconstruction it can be seen that the struggle for power occurs among the family of the descendants of Sanjaya and not because of the conflict between dynasty Kailendra and Sanjaya. Mantyasi inscriptions call King Sanjaya and other old-fashioned kings as follows. Rayangta Rumahun Riam Dang Ri Po Pitu Rakai Mataram Sang Ratu Sanjaya Kri Maharaja Rakai Pulangaran Kri Mahara as it was called above Balatung rising throne because of marrying the daughter of King Daksa. Therefore, to legitimize his power Balatung mentions in the inscription Mantyasi names of the king of his predecessor, this is common in the kings who rise the throne not genealogically or forced. Various ways to do for example Majapahit's first king Raden Wijaya, he rode the throne for marrying the daughter of King Kertanagara. For his legitimacy he called his title by combining the names of his predecessor king. For example the title of Kertarahasa Jayawardhana was a combination of his in-laws Kertanagara, and Rahasa held Ken Erik. Jayawardhana joint from King Tojaya and Wisnuward as the forerunner of the ancestors of Balatung, namely King Sanjaya, called Rayangta Rumahun Ri, Ms. Ri, Pitu, Rakai Mataram, the Ratu Sanjaya. In the inscription it can be seen that the sari is glorified in Mdang in Pul Pitu. Mdang means the name of the kingdom and Po Patuit the name of the location of his kingdom. Until now it is not yet known for sure the location of the Po Pitu, which is clear from the inscription data. It turns out that the location of the kingdom of Mdang moves and this displacement is interesting to research the cause. Another newest obtained from the results of the Santo Saba exploration in the Kapuchuan 13 Koto Riau province, Sumatra, Indonesia. Mathangkari is a light picture of the sun symbol with the Katanka government center with the symbol 4 cross recorded in symbol Su Astika. This inscription was written on a large natural stone in the village of Plumpungan near Salatiga. Sanskrit's language, and the letter is no longer the letters of Pallawa, but ancient Javanese letters. So, this is the older Javanese letters in the pre-year prounce. The contents commemorate the provision of land in Hampra village N, which is located in the Trigramwaya region, by a person named Banu for the sake of worship against Isa. With the approval of the Sidedui. Continuing to 4th. By Santo Saba.